program is recorded and later it will be uploaded to the Ontario Heroes website. Now, moving on with the expert speakers, I would like to take this opportunity to present our first speaker, Hina Marsonia. Ms. Hina graduated from the University of Toronto in 1999 and obtained her PharmD at University of Colorado in 2009. She has worked in multiple settings, including community and inpatient hospital pharmacy. She is the founder of RX Innovative Solutions, where she trained over 1,000 foreign trained pharmacists for PBC exams in 2009, from 2009 to 2013. She was a member of OCP's Professional Practice Committee from 2001 to 2004 and assessor for PBC exams from 2002 to 2005. She currently works at the William Osler Health System in the outpatient setting. Hina, we are honored to have you with us today, and it's my pleasure to hand it over to you. Hina Marsonia.
Thank you, Rinku. Thank you, Praveen. And I just wanted to sort of introduce myself in the sense that even though, I did a lot of work with PBC and the student training, foreign student training, I think a lot has changed with the pandemic. Having said that, I'm hoping to answer any questions or help you guide where to get the answers. I'm definitely not an expert on some of those questions that are being posted, but I'll attempt my best to try to answer them as best as I can. A lot of the questions are very specific to timing of the exams, and I think with COVID, it's important to recognize that there might be some leeway in terms of the 2-year mark that you have from when you write the exams to the expiry date. So I think it's important to contact whichever, provincial regulatory board you're going to be going to sort of check with them whether they have some leeway. So that's one of the common questions that came up in the chat prior to the presentation. Okay. So in terms of this presentation, we had a great successful presentation last time, but it was long. So hopefully some of you may have seen this, or some of you, it might be new, but I just wanted to briefly take the time today to go over the licensing and career paths as it relates to pharmacy. So the objectives of my next couple of minutes will be to review that process from a licensing perspective and a requirement perspective. I'm going to specifically speak to Ontario, that's where we are, but certainly the websites that I will be providing will give you where to get information for other provinces as well, discuss career paths in pharmacy, and kind of highlight approaches to utilize to gain experience within the pharmacy practice as you come into to the country. In terms of career paths, pharmacy is very, very broad in the sense that you can work in community. That's typically where, most people end up practicing. However, there's always the industry route, research and development, clinical research, study coordinators. I think there's a huge demand with study coordinators at this time, just because of the sheer volume of studies that are being done in the COVID setting with some of the companies. And so having some of that background from a pharmacy perspective can be helpful for these positions. There's production, that's manufacturing of medications. I think pharmacists, depending on where you've been trained and what courses you've taken, manufacturing, pill making, and all that comes with our experience as pharmacists in pharmaceuticals. There's also the regulatory as well as sales and marketing aspect within industry. Oftentimes, industry is, a good career path for those that have graduated from outside of the country. It is a way, a venue of sort of getting a position and then sort of moving up within those positions. Again, those positions may require you to be pharmacist, but not necessarily a licensed pharmacist from the province itself. So it might end up as an option for those pharmacists that may not want to pursue the community or the hospital practice route. And then finally, the hospital practice route, which requires for most pharmacists that are that have graduated from even Ontario or any of the other provinces to complete a pharmacy residency, which is ideal, which again adds another year of learning to sort of help you facilitate and navigate through the hospital practice system. So again, it's a very varied variety of career paths as a pharmacist. Now, specifically, most people are ending up asking or getting into community pharmacists. So where do we start as a candidate? If I was a pharmacist from, another country, the best information that you could get and sort of navigate and enroll yourself as a candidate is the Pharmacist Gateway Canada website. The website link is here. What you get is you're going to get a national ID number, which is required for you to apply for a PBC for the document evaluation, as well as to create your profile so that it can be tracked along. You can upload your language test there as well. And this can be viewed by yourself, PBC, and any of the pharmacy regulatory board once you've applied to them, and as well as the NAPRA administrator. The fee itself is a $340 fee. And here is what the website looks like. So again, for each of these, there's 3 steps for any international pharmacy graduates. There's the document evaluation, there's the evaluation examination, and then finally the qualifying examinations, which is a 2-step exam. One is a written form, and the second is the OSCE. In terms of the website itself, you can get information on the latest news, as well as some guidance on which examinations you may be writing for. So again, if you're applying as a pharmacist for a pharmacy technician examination, or you want to pursue your career as a pharmacy technician, this is the same website you would go through. You could see up on top, it's got 2 sections, one for pharmacy technicians and one for pharmacists. In terms of the criteria for the 3-year rule, the 2 parts of the qualifying examinations are to be completed within that 3-year point. I think given the circumstances these days, there might be some leeway, but again, you would have to write it. You would have to make a request in writing typically. So calling might be your first step, but if you speak to somebody at PEBC, they will want you to put your request in writing with the attention to the assistant registrar, including reasons why you weren't able to sort of meet the deadline and any supporting documentation. And if it's for a healthcare reason, then providing that documentation, including the dates and concerns of and the impact it had on your health might be worthwhile, as well as again here it's highlighted that requests for extensions in the following circumstances will not be considered. Those on the basis of other personal or financial circumstances and candidates who were previously granted an extension to this 3-year rule. So again, given the COVID circumstances, there might be some leeway, but again, it's a case-by-case sort of approval that would need to go through. Policies and procedures, again, there's a section on policy and procedures here. You can talk about what the definition of the emergency procedure or extraordinary circumstances are. You can click on it and get that, the 3-year rule, and those requirements for the PBC exam 1 as well as the OSCE are highlighted. Bear with me. It looks like my frozen. Okay, so moving on to the language requirement. This is one of the biggest challenges that is faced by IPGs, so your international pharmacy graduates, when they come to Canada. One of the things that is significant in our practice as pharmacists within community or in the hospital is communication with patients, staff, and healthcare professionals. So if you do not speak the language, French is listed here if you're getting your licensing in Quebec. But I would highly recommend you start speaking English. It is the most common language in most provinces. And if sometimes you study with your friends and colleagues and your native language, but it's important for you to recognize that you need to start developing some skill sets around speaking English. So try to, engage yourself, learn with others in English as well. One of the most common barriers that I found when I used to do the PBCs is the nonverbal communication skills. And these nonverbal communication skills are as important as verbal communications for the OSCE exam. So listening skills, that body language, sort of picking up on cues that the standardized patient is telling you, and then asking those prompting questions. The National Association of Pharmacy Regulatory Authorities have set standards for language proficiencies. These are very baseline. So I would still say try to, if you have somebody that can help you with this, help you build those skills for empathy, how to provide empathy, how to just be natural at speaking English. So if it's not your first language, it's not going to be easy. So try to practice. With anything, with practice, you just get better. Here you could see the TOEFL and the IELTS scorings for each of the type of test and the minimum scores required. So you can refer to those at your own time. In terms of resources for language proficiencies, we've got some links here that provide you further guidance on where to go for this information. And again, in terms of applying for the Pharmacy Regulatory Authority, You must apply to each one directly if you want to be licensed, in addition to applying to the Pharmacist Gateway Canada website. Each jurisdiction has its own variation and unique conditions for licensing, and that's why it's important to apply and look at those specifically. You can change your designation for your whichever province or regulatory body you would want to apply for once you've applied through the system itself. Once the application is completed, it cannot be changed. You can add another regulatory authority, regulatory pharmacy regulatory authority if you've already applied to the designated one. In terms of permissions, you would need to give permission to these pharmacy regulatory authority to view your documents and your results. And then you have to pay an additional fee for the province or the pharmacy regulatory authority as well. So for example, for the Ontario College of Pharmacists, you will need to contact them once you've done your application. So in terms of where you would find licensing information for each of the provinces, you can see the NAPRA guidelines here. This is the NAPRA website. You can right click at the top here on any of the provinces that you have here. Some of the requirements is how you would have to undertake your studies prior to sort of applying for the PBC1 and PBC2. So certain provinces have leniency compared to others. The pharmacy bridging program, this is more specific to Ontario and British Columbia and Quebec. These are the mandatory, it is mandatory for you to be taking a bridging program. It consists of education courses recognized by the university or the Canadian Institute designated, and it aims to sort of help you build knowledge and skills that would meet the Canadian standards for practice. So there's a combination of independent studies, seminars, case studies, role-playing, simulated work experiences. Often the professors that you meet are going to be the same professors that you may see during your PBCs. If you're thinking of applying and sort of getting licensed in Ontario, I'd highly recommend going through this program. It has shown to help international educated professionals increase their risk, increase their chances of success and finding employment in their field. And I think at this point, if you had listened to one of our speakers last time, it's not about just a license anymore. It's about how you've studied, how well you present yourself, during the interview, as well as what background do you have in terms of how did you study to get that licensing when you came into the country. So I think that's becoming very important as well to sort of gain some of that experience, as well as being marketable. Also taking CE courses, such as the Canadian Diabetes Education or the Canadian Diabetes Educator licensing, or the geriatric certification that is being offered, kind of helps you stand out. But again, those are additional things. Time commitment is a huge thing. And in a study in 2008, so again, very, very dated, does not even sort of account for the COVID that we have now. So the estimated average length of time was 26 months for an IPG to get licensed. Several factors involved in this process, and it varies from one candidate to the other. The document evaluation process takes time, so getting your documents from the university and the Pharmacy Regulatory Authority is really important. The PBC is offered 2 times a year, and so that's also adding to the time. The PRA offers a jurisprudence exam at a specific time throughout the year as well. Again, this has changed slightly during the COVID as they were trying to get more pharmacists licensed to meet the demands of the needs of the healthcare system. So there's a lot of opportunities right now for pharmacists to, work within their scope, but also work in roles such as vaccinating, the public, which is great. And then number of attempts, you're permitted a certain number of attempts. You can, and that can add to the timing as well. It can add a minimum of 6 months per attempt as individuals want to get licensed. And then there's also the immigration process. And there's a calculator in the website. It will kind of give you a time and convenient time and a cost calculator. So try to use that to sort of see how that would impact you. And beware of the time limit, the schedule, the deadlines. Some provinces only accept the language proficiency test that are 2 years of duration mark. You may need to recomplete your language credentialing based on that. So check on those. Again, this slide kind of highlights the requirements, the time frame, the duration for each of the specific providers, including the PBC, NAPRA, as well as UFT. The Pharmacist Getaway website also has some resources for individuals coming in to Canada, in the sense that, how to get that work permit, the citizenship, living situation, living costs, and how to find training options as well. Now, the International Pharmacist Graduate PACE program. The PACE program is for anyone who's graduated out of the country. You will have to undergo this process, and it is highlighted in the Pharmacist Getaway Canada website as well. And again, it's just an attempt for you to sort of have the opportunity to practice within the system before you're full-on licensed. And so that's a great opportunity to sort of make sure that you do have the working experience. So again, those websites that we spoke about are the PBC website, the NAPRA website, the Pharmacist Getaway Canada website. That's the first place you should be going to, and then specifically to the provincial one. So given the fact that we're in Ontario, it is the OCP, Ontario College of Pharmacists website, that you would go get that information. Speaking about opportunities for pharmacists that are non-licensed pharmacists, pharmacovigilance is a certificate program. It is offered by private colleges. There's also other programs that are certificate programs. If you wanted to take some in research conduction or pharmaceuticals, they do have them. Again, you will have to do some diggings. Each college has its own sort of skill sets and benefits, but it's important that they do meet all the requirements for the position that you're going to be applying for. And then one of the things that I do want to stress on is mentorship. Mentorship is really important. Shadowing a pharmacist that's already practicing, speaking and networking on the responsibilities and the opportunities within the industry with somebody that's already a pharmacist is really important. Kind of get a highlight on what is it that is expected of you as a pharmacist. Our responsibilities as pharmacists has significantly changed. We're moving from a product oriented business to a service oriented business. And the fact that now we're able to give vaccination, it speaks to that, as well as med checks and other, extended scope of practice within the pharmacist role that we've been granted recently, also speaks to that. And for those that are not aware, but we will be able to do A1C testing for our patients in the retail setting soon as well. So there's a lot of opportunities for clinical work. And so speaking and mentoring and shadowing a pharmacist will give you that breadth of experience, even if you're studying. Part of studying is also observing, learning on the ground, and getting that real world experience is a huge benefit. One of the things that I used to get from students is that, well, I have to study, so I have to spend a lot of time studying. I don't have time for this. But the amount of learning you can do just by observing, watching, and sort of being in a pharmacy environment is essential. Those communication skills that we talk about that is required for the OSCE is typically learned in those settings. How to approach a patient. Some of the biggest challenges in the OSCE for somebody who is coming in is, that first couple of sentences on, the icebreaker when they see a patient or a standardized patient. If you've never seen a patient, you freeze. And we see that during these examinations. You can have somebody who's got all that knowledge, but if they're not able to communicate it or pick up on those listening skills, then, they may not do as well. So it's important to get the experience, volunteer in a pharmacy, understand the scope of practice, again, by being in that environment. And then for purposes of studying, the one that I would recommend is the IPG course through U of T. It is great. It allows for group studying, networking with students that are in the same boat as you, as well as getting a networking with the staff, the faculty, and getting that extra support if you need to. Learn to learn well. So, people know what their weaknesses are, but then they brush it off. So it's important to learn to identify these gaps, rectify them through various avenues. And then commitment to learning and putting in the time is really important. We've got a series of questions, but I'm gonna skip over them, and then maybe we can take them up at this time or at the end.
I think any specific questions related to registering can be asked now so that we can discuss it as a continuation. So if anybody has any questions on registration process or some regulatory questions, you can post it now or unmute yourself and ask it directly.
So you're right. There are no language requirements for registering for PBC. This comes in play prior to that. So that is correct. And then there's a good point here. In the case of OCP, they don't consider one of the language proficiency, the CELPIP, as one of the recognized one. Again, that's really specific to whichever provinces you apply for. That's why you have to make sure to check on that. So given that, I would probably not take that as my language proficiency test. Any questions, comments?
We have one more questions like, can abroad students register for evaluating exam outside Canada and give the exam as well?
So so the exam has to be taken here at this point. I don't know if they're going to change those requirements because of COVID. Unfortunately, it seems like, yes, you could technically do it, but I think there's a reasons for that as to why they're not allowing that. And again, a lot of it is beyond just even OCP, but it is what it is. And I think it's also making sure that, if they were able to do it abroad from their perspective, you want to make sure that there's no opportunity for somebody else writing the exam. And how are they going to make sure that it's being delivered in a fashion, no cheating happening, right? So there's all that needs to be taken into account.
To add to that, I would like to say that the 2020 exams and 2021 evaluating exams, they have temporarily made some changes to the rules that these exams can be taken remotely. But as I said, those are temporary and they may change it once the pandemic situation is over. So as of now, the permanent rule is that you have to be in Canada for taking the evaluating exams.
And just to give you some background, the sites that provide those remote sort of access have credentialings of their own to make sure that there's no opportunity for people using references, using a friend to check in. So, and those things cannot happen internationally, right? So that's part of that.
We have another question regarding opportunities for students who have cleared the evaluating exam.
So I think, at this time, there's lots of opportunities within the healthcare from a vaccination perspective. So I don't know necessarily, these are short-term things that are happening, but opportunities in the sense of volunteering, picking up a part-time position. There's a lot of opportunities if you find them. You have to network. You have to be on a website or like a forum like of this nature, right? Where you're able to connect with pharmacists that are working and are able to help you mentor or give you guidance as to if there's any opportunities. So there are a lot of opportunities if you have the right skill sets and you have the right networking as well. And then I think what are the scopes and requirements in the academia? A broad experience is considered. So absolutely, depending on where you're if you've done a lot of research as part of your previous experience, and you wanted to sort of take that, I think the best approach of that one would be in the pharmaceutical industry, where you might be doing some research or ensuring that the requirements for the research are being carried through at the site, at the specific site. So yes, there are opportunities. Again, you just have to navigate through the system and find a mentor that will help you facilitate that learning, as well as find you options.
I think that's all. Oh, yeah. Uh, Only those questions are posted for now. And thank you, Hina, for sharing your wisdom and taking us through the detailed process of registration and giving us some valuable informations which individuals can consider in their career paths. And more questions can be asked towards the end of this session if you have any. And now I'm going to take time to introduce our next speaker, Aska Patel. Ms. Aska is a community pharmacist currently providing clinical services in a home care setting. She's a 2012 graduate of the University of Waterloo School of Pharmacy and completed her PharmD from the same in 2016. She brings diverse insights and pharmacy experience, which include work experience in community, hospital, home care, and government settings over the span of her 8 years pharmacy career. With a passion to contribute to the profession, Aska also serves as a member of various committees at the Ontario Pharmacists Association, Ontario College of Pharmacists, the International Pharmaceutical Federation, and Ontario Health. It's my pleasure to welcome you as our next presenter, and we are privileged with your esteemed presence. Over to you, Ms. Aska.
Well, thank you very much, Rinko. It's a pleasure to be a part of this team today. Thank you, Hina, for that great information. I think you've made my job a lot more easier, just by sharing all that valuable information out there. What I am going to do is I will quickly share some of my insights in terms of career pathways in particular. Because I graduated here in Canada, I do not have much experience or exposure with the international pharmacy graduate process in terms of you coming and making an entry into Canada. However, what I can share with you is from the experiences that I have with my colleagues who are international graduates, as well as from what I have seen through over the years in terms of what works and what doesn't work as you're trying to choose a path for yourself in pharmacy. So with that said, bear with me a second here. I'm just going to share. There we go. Do let me know if you can see this, please.
Yes, we can see your screen, Aska.
Oh, awesome, great. And you're seeing the slides, right? Because I can't see anything on my screen. All right, so, okay. Basically, just to share a bit about my own career path in terms of, how did I get here? Okay, it seems like for some odd reason, it's not sharing the right screen. There we go. All right, I hope you're seeing the right screen. But yes, so my career journey has so far been, I graduated from University of Waterloo in 2012 with my Bachelor's of Pharmacy, and then I practiced in the community for about 3 years because that's really where I felt I would kind of see myself in the long term. However, because I did not find the professional satisfaction that I was looking for as a practicing pharmacist, I decided to go back to school to finish my Doctor of Pharmacy in 2016. As a part of my PharmD, I had to do a rotation at a hospital, which is how I gained my exposure in the hospital setting, and I later found a position after I completed my rotation. From then, I kind of switched gears into coming back into community in a more clinical role where I work with patients in their homes in terms of doing medication reconciliation and medication management. So that is my current role for the past 4.5 years now. In the meantime, while I'm doing the clinical role on the side, I've also embraced entrepreneurship, providing consulting services. And I think what I wanted to share is from my journey is that we all have our own unique journeys, and we all are, we should choose to do what we want to do. So I really encourage you to think outside of the box. And if you don't think community is your calling and you want to pursue a hospital setting, go for it. There's nothing stopping you, even if you're an international graduate. The only challenge is that it might be a little difficult to get your foot in right from the get-go. But as Hina mentioned, if you have the right mentorship and the right networking, you will find those opportunities which can take you to that end goal. So I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but I did want to kind of give a quick highlight in terms of what is required, and as you're navigating these pathways, community pharmacy does make up. Oh, it seems like we have somebody's unmuted. Community pharmacy does make up the biggest chunk of. They do make up the biggest chunk of practicing pharmacists. I believe about 70% of pharmacists practice in a community setting. Hospital setting is the next biggest chunk. As Hina mentioned, hospital pharmacies do require pharmacy residency or significant experience or exposure in pharmacy, in hospital pharmacy. Industry is another one where you don't necessarily need to be a licensed pharmacist, depending on which roles you're choosing. Academia, again, Hina did allude to this a little earlier as well, but with academia, if you have experience, especially as a published author and as a recognized thought leader, you do have can pursue opportunities. If you do not have that significant research experience in your background, you could consider pursuing a master's in pharmacy or a PhD, which is offered by all pharmacy schools. As something to advance your skills and knowledge, and that can then help you transition into academia, because as part of your master's and PhD in pharmacy, you are going to be working as a teaching assistant at those universities as well. Regulatory, so the regulatory setting is organizations like NAPRA, the colleges or the boards that provide you with the licensure to practice, and they also have positions open for pharmacists and pharmacy professionals. Clinical consulting pharmacy, this is more of where you're providing consultancy services for medication management and clinicals. We are seeing a significant uptake in this, especially now with digital health initiatives coming into the forefront. There's a lot more need for that therapeutic background to be provided, and pharmacists are being tapped into to share their expertise and knowledge. And specialist settings. So these are a lot of variety of settings, including specialty pharmacy. So this is where you would compound sterile compounds like IV medications, injectables, or even dosage forms, oral dosage forms as well. There is compression stockings, like you're trained to become a pharmacist with a specialty in weight management, chronic disease management, respiratory management, you name it. There's a lot of different certifications that you can also pursue and that makes you a specialist within that field. So these are the different career pathways, and I think what the beauty about pharmacy is that your career options are endless. So really do what you feel like you're truly passionate about, or at least try to align your journey so that you're shifting in that direction with every career change that you make. I'm not going to spend too much time here, but because Hina has also shared this information, but the scope of practice for pharmacists is changing significantly and drastically, especially during the pandemic. In Ontario especially, pharmacists have received the authority to test for COVID, to vaccinate against COVID. We're getting prescription authority in terms of adapting prescriptions, renewing prescriptions, controlled prescriptions that we're able to now renew as well. Even though some of these measures are temporary in nature, it does allow us to work with it. Hopefully in the future it will become a more permanent scope of practice. There's professional services, such as chronic disease management, compounding, patient education, vaccination, and prescribing. All provinces are not the same, so depending on which province you are choosing to practice in, your scope of practice will vary, and you should be mindful of what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do. Especially because once you're licensed in one province, you're then able to transfer that license to multiple provinces as long as you give sorting of the jurisprudence exams. However, because the scope of practices can vary from province to province, please always be mindful of what you're allowed to do and what you're not allowed to do within that province that you're practicing in. So what does the present landscape look like for pharmacy? Pharmacy, especially pre-pandemic, pharmacy looked very different than what it is looking right now. Before the pandemic, there were a few struggles that pharmacy was seeing, especially because we are highly dependent on the government model of public model that we have for healthcare here in Canada, where government changes affect the profession significantly. And also we were looking at potential saturation that we were starting to see within the profession, where opportunities were becoming harder and harder to find for pharmacists. However, in the last year and a half, during the pandemic, we have had so many opportunities open up because of the sheer demand. And we are starting to notice new roles coming up. For example, a pharmacist dedicated just for vaccinations, pharmacists dedicated just for testing, to help with the workload that kind of goes through when you're implementing such focused and high volume services. So the market is still competitive, but there's opportunities. As long as you are willing to either be outside of the metropolitan area, that tends to give you a better exposure because the opportunities are much more available there and less competitive in nature. The financial part of it, it's no surprise that there are concerns in Canada about the declining wage of pharmacists. That has kind of stalled for the time being, where we are not seeing that decline as significant as we were seeing it in the past. However, pharmacists, in terms of what they were making, especially in a community setting, what they were making about 10 years ago, they're not making the same wage right now. And so my advice to all international graduates, because I have seen this very many times, is to know your worth and know what the market rates are, and make sure that once you get licensed and once you're in practice, make sure that you're not agreeing to take anything lower than what the market rates are. Just because you're new to the market doesn't mean that you should be taken advantage of. So just be mindful of that. Trust, I think one of the biggest things is just making sure you're working for people that you are trusting, and agencies. There are a lot of agencies which are very well in terms of giving you work assignments, and they're very credible. And again, just like with everywhere in the world, we always have a small pool where you've got to be careful for. So just making sure that you have the right network which can guide you to the right resources will really help. The cost, Hina has already mentioned, so I'm not going to go into it. And post-licensure, so once you have been licensed to practice in Canada in the province of your interest, there's minimum cost that you need to upkeep on an annual basis to keep your licensure, and that includes your annual registration fees with the regulatory college that you are, for the province that you're practicing in, the liability insurance that you need to have as a licensed pharmacist, and any certifications and continuing educations that you're going to do, because continuing education is a very important part of being a licensed pharmacist and making sure that you're keeping up to date with the knowledge that is currently being disseminated. And just to, I wanted to share this resource with you because I felt like this was something that it may help if you're trying to find out what it is that you're feeling very passionate about in pharmacy that you want to focus your career on. And as part of a working group at the International Pharmaceutical Association, I actually developed this exercise. It's called 100 and More Jobs in Pharmacy and Pharmaceutical Sciences. And it actually helps you explore the different jobs that exist right now for pharmacists and pharmaceutical scientists. And I have provided a link, so please feel free to go ahead and review it. If anything, it will at least give you an idea of, just how versatile the profession is, and that your job options are not just limited to the settings that we talk about commonly. There's a lot of other emerging fields, especially in artificial intelligence, astropharmacy, you name it, sports medicine. There's a lot of growing interest and a role that pharmacists can play within these fields. So some of these resources, I'm not going to go through all of the technical details of it because they've already been discussed. However, I have linked them here, and this will be shared with you. So you will have an idea, you will have the links for them as well. But what I did want to highlight was understanding the difference between a regulatory body and an association within the province and in Canada. So a regulatory body is like your college, which gives you the license to practice, and they're the ones who are making sure that if there's ever a complaint that comes up against you about something that has gone wrong, they will be the ones looking at that complaint and kind of sharing what they feel the decision should be. So the regulatory body is the one that regulates us. The associations are there more to support and advocate for our profession. So they're the ones that will usually come up with continuing education activities for you, networking, mentorship conferences, and also opportunities to get involved if you feel passionate about advocating for the profession of pharmacy. So I think as newcomers to Canada, it's always good to kind of get an idea of where do you go for which kind of an information. So if you're looking for scope of practice or what you're allowed to do, what you're not allowed to do, then your regulatory college would be the best place to go to. Whereas if you're looking for more information on how can I become certified or in this particular disease state, the association would be the best bet because they would be able to then guide you forward as well. Some tips and tools that I wanted to share was network, and I think Hina has already emphasized this as well, and I want to emphasize it again, is you cannot underestimate the importance of networking because depending on how well networked you are, opportunities will present. Pharmacy is a very small world, so making sure that you're able to connect with the right people who can then connect you to opportunities. And I think that also includes finding mentors who understand the goal that you're trying to achieve and the vision of where you see yourself 5 to 10 years from now. And if the mentors can support you with the vision and goal is very important. So making sure you find that, and that would only happen once you start talking to people through such forums like we are today, and through other opportunities, attending conferences, joining committees. As part of committees that I am at the Ontario College of Pharmacists as well as the Ontario Pharmacists Association, I really do cherish the networks that I have built because if I have a question, it helps to for me to reach out to somebody in terms of if how do I go about it, or if I ever feel like I don't know what to do in the situation, then I can rely on my mentors and my network to help me kind of figure out what to do about it. Gain experience. So I always believe that if you like something that you like, a job posting that you really like, even if you don't feel like you may have all the skills that they're looking for, apply. There's no harm in applying. You never know when that might just click. So if you don't take a chance at it, you'd have 0% chance of succeeding in it. But if you have even a 1% chance, apply for it because you just never know when that 1% chance will kick in. So if you like something, apply for it anyways, and just make sure you're able to, when you're applying for jobs, I think one of the key advices that I received when I was starting my professional journey was, whenever you apply for jobs, make sure you are able to explain why you're a good fit for that role by highlighting your experiences and your skills which match what the job is looking for, or why, even if you don't have that experience, how can you bring a different perspective to that position? And I think if you're able to share that confidently and in a very convincing way, you have a good shot at being interviewed for that position. And once you get interviewed, that is your networking opportunity, believe it or not. Even if you get the job or not, if you're able to leave a good, great impression, then that's your chance for the next time something like this opens up. And I think I was having a conversation with Rinku before this webinar started around hospital pharmacy. And I think I wanted to emphasize this. So with hospital pharmacy, because there is this requirement, and even it's for Canadian graduates as well with the pharmacy residency, what I have seen some international graduates do is if they come with some hospital experience as their background, they do try to apply for positions within the rural areas, oftentimes because of the high needs that are there. They are able to get in if they have some hospital experience to kind of back their clinical skills. And that might be a gateway for you to get some exposure in the hospital setting. Volunteering in a hospital is usually very difficult, from my understanding. Hina, correct me if I'm wrong there. But it is very difficult to find volunteering positions within a hospital setting. Bridging programs are great, again, to network, to learn about, what you can, what does practicing pharmacy look like in Canada in different settings, and also to learn, and to fill the gaps, because we all come from different parts of the world and we practice pharmacy very differently throughout the world. So it's important to know that, you should know what you're signing up for by getting a license here in Canada, just so that there are no surprises down the road. Trust me when I say this, because I sit on the Inquiries, Reports and Complaints Committee at the Ontario College of Pharmacists. This is where we receive complaints that are put in either by patients, members of the profession, and we do see oftentimes members who are newly licensed, and they did not realize that this was part, or this was not part of a scope of practice for which when they're practicing in Ontario. So that's why I cannot emphasize this enough, is make sure you know what you're signing up for, and make sure you know what your limitations are, and don't ever cross that scope of practice line. If you ever feel compelled to, make sure you reach out to your college to discuss it further. Certification, so make sure that you're keeping up, and if there's any disease management field that interests you, like diabetes, respiratory, geriatrics, if that interests you, get certification. That also helps improve your chances of succeeding in getting an interview and successfully applying for a job which may be looking for that particular skill. There's also a NAPRA mentor program, which is called the Prepare for Practical Training. It's a pilot program currently, but it was really designed with international pharmacy graduates in mind. I know it was something that I just recently signed up to be a mentor for, and I believe they will be rolling it out shortly. And volunteer. So I have an asterisk beside the volunteer, and the reason why, it's because oftentimes I've seen even some licensed pharmacists volunteering, their time. It's good that this is your way of gaining experience. However, this should not be a more long-term contract, because you're basically giving your time as a licensed professional for free when you're signing up to be a volunteer, especially after you have received your licensure. I think that's one of the reasons why I highly encourage the bridging program, just because that kind of then fills that gap for you, while you're also building that valuable network and learning all the different, Canadian rules and regulations within that program itself. And last but not the least, seek support. So if any time, you ever feel like you're not sure what you are doing or what you should be doing, make sure you always reach out to your friends, to your peers, to your colleagues, to your mentors. And in cases where you think like, you're in an ethical situation where you're not sure, okay, what do I do with the situation? Should I go ahead and do this or not do this? It's always a good idea to contact the college to get some, advice in terms, because they do have practice consultants who can guide you in terms of whether this is something that you should be doing or not doing, or if they are not able to provide that guidance to you, they're able to refer you to somebody who can then provide that guidance to you. And I think last but not least, I would like to end it by saying that learn to negotiate your wages. Often there's many a times where we are seeing international pharmacy graduates do not know what the market rates are and are agreeing to work at lower rates than what we would consider to be a market wage. And so just be mindful and know what your worth is, so that you can negotiate for that. Especially right now with the sheer need for pharmacists within Ontario, just because the whole vaccination efforts that are going on. This is not big of a concern, but once the pandemic is settled with, we do want to be mindful that we are not creating an instability and an unfair environment for anyone who's wishing to practice in Ontario. Okay, and then with that, I do have my contact information provided here. So if there's any questions, feel free to put in the chat box here, or reach out to me, and I'm happy to share my learnings or advice. And if there's anything I can help with, I'll be happy to do so. Back to you, Rinku.
Okay, thank you, Aska, for sharing some valuable information on the scope of practice and also guiding us for especially the job seekers. And if anyone has some questions about scope of practice, you can post it right now. And we are open for the question and answer session, so any questions will be answered now.
Do we have any practicing pharmacists on the group today? Next time we'll do a polling session so we know. You can unmute yourself and maybe identify yourself if you're a practicing pharmacist or you've just received your licensing. Okay. No take.
I see Rohit joined the call. Rohit is like a pseudo pharmacist in the making.
Who? Sorry?
Rohit.
Oh, is he's on the line?
Yes. Well, no, he's just, he's a colleague of mine. He's actually, if I'm not wrong, a social worker by background.
Oh, okay.
So I'm an occupational therapist.
Oh, I'm sorry. Way to make a blunder. Sorry about that, Rohit.
Okay. Well, if there's no questions, maybe if there are any questions that people have, you can certainly send it through to us and we'll surely sort of answer them in writing by email and post it for the group.
Before winding up, I would like to mention again about signing up to our website. So I would encourage anyone who would like to join Ontario Heroes to sign up to the website and join the networking platform. As Aska mentioned, networking is very important when it comes to practice pharmacy or any other profession. So please join the networking platform if you wish to. And if you have any questions, there will be a mentor for each profession, and you can always post your questions there. I think we are good to wind it up, right? Now, coming to the end of this webinar, it's my absolute pleasure to thank Mr. Praveen Varkey, the President and CEO of Ontario Heroes, for organizing this event. Thank you, Praveen. And I would like to take time to specially thank both our speakers and all the organizers who made this event a reality. And it was a really great and resourceful morning. And I hope all the audience might have got some points to take home with you. And I hope each and every one of you will achieve your dreams eventually. And so once again, thank you, each and every one of you, and I take leave of you. Have a good weekend.
Welcome to the community portal of Ontario Heroes. Ontario Heroes Health and Social Services is a registered not-for-profit organization built on the traditional Canadian values of volunteerism and the spirit of giving. All our services and programs are aligned to reflect this spirit of collaboration and goodwill. The Ontario Heroes Community Portal provides a platform for knowledge sharing, networking, and professional development. You will find details of vision and mission, leadership team, volunteers, community partners, recruiting services and supporter programs there. Find information on Advocacy Center, international programs, awards and scholarships, groups and discussion forums among others. We welcome you to explore opportunities for your professional development by joining as a member or volunteer. For more details, visit our website. You will find more information to reach Ontario Heroes and access various programs at the web portal. Visit and join today.